today, Laura Ward joins me to talk about navigating career pivots and finding purpose in the process. Welcome to another episode of Purpose Driven Progress. As always, I am your host and coach, Jacob Hicks. And today, I'm stoked for the guest that I've got on for you today. Today, I'm welcoming Laura Ward to the show. Starting her nonprofit in 2019 and officially transitioning it in 2022, she turned a deeply personal mission into a life-changing organization. From her background in 9/11 operations and accounting to becoming a dog trainer, Laura's experiences have shaped her unique approach to serving others, especially those touched by trauma. Her story began with a friend's devastating loss and grew into a passion for helping military families and first responders in need. Laura, thank you so much for joining us. I'm super stoked to talk to you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm just as excited to be here.
So let's start at the beginning, because I feel like the journey into the nonprofit world is always kind of a unique one. And we kind of talked about it a little bit already, but like you started out in 9/11 operations and in accounting. So how did you go from 9/11 operator and accounting to being a dog trainer that's helping provide service dogs to military folks?
Yeah. Well, the journey has been quite crazy, but um, my husband and I have 6 kids altogether, and our oldest 3 have been in the military. They're veterans. And so that's kind of where everything started. Our passion started for the military life and just veterans in general. And it's also during those years that we learned about the 22 that commit suicide a day. And so that kind of brought us in 2019, brought us pretty close to home to that. And in 2019, one of our good friends lost her son to suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at that funeral that we ended up. I'll just go through the story, but so we were that day, I was at the funeral, and then we went to the graveside, and all of the cars were lined up at the gravesite waiting for everyone to finish getting there, pulling in, and then as I'm sitting there, I way up in the very front of the, I believe it was my friend's dog, went from the back seat, jumped over to the front seat. And I just happened to send a text message to my husband that couldn't be there that day. And I just sent a quick text message and said, maybe we should train service dogs laugh out loud. And he sent a quick text message back to me, let's do it, laugh out loud. Completely just joking, because on a side note, one of our other children had over 200 stitches in his mouth or face because of a large dog. And so we were totally not thinking about dogs at all at that point, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, so we just went on with our lives, basically. And so a couple of weeks down the road, I came back to my husband and I said, the service dog thing just keeps coming up in my brain. And he mentioned to me as well the same thing, that it was just kind of stuck in his head as well. And so we just kept, we would see service dogs everywhere, it seemed like, and then at church, we would hear a sermon that was given on Sunday, and just like how it just related to where we were at that time and how it just completely fit to what we were doing and what we were thinking. And then, I actually was doing a devotional one day, and the devotional was "Who Am I?" It was the title of the day. And that it just completely went through everything that we were both feeling, thinking, everything. Because we were both like, well, who are we to start a nonprofit, you
Yep.
know? We're just two people from Greenfield, Iowa. We don't know anybody. We don't, we don't have connections. We don't have anything. Um, so it was like, but the devotional just went completely all the way through, like, it actually touched on Moses and, how he was feeling the exact same way. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
um, so we decided to maybe just, check into it and, see what came about. So we started, with some friends, discussing with friends, um, about what has been transpiring. And so then that led to one of our other friends who knew of someone that had a service dog. And so we ended up having a meeting with him. He actually is our board president currently, but and so after that meeting with him, that just sparked a flame in my husband and I that it just set us on fire. We just were like, we have to do this. And so then, we actually went to Puppy Jake, who is a well-known, service dog trainer in Des
Okay.
Moines. And, so we went and we kind of interviewed them, discussed with them, and then we actually started training one of their puppies.
Mm.
That puppy didn't work out, but it just gave us more flames to the fire, and we were set. We were like, this is what we need to do. I mean, I loved training that puppy, and it was just amazing. So we just went on from there, and it grew and grew and grew.
I love it. I love that so much because I mean, I feel like anybody who's ever had a dog in their own life knows how amazing just having the dog can be. But when you've gone through something so, traumatic as either like first responders or like our military veterans, it can, I mean, I don't know if we can really truly quantify how big of an impact that can have on their
Right.
lives. I'm really curious because I mean, I've had dogs all my life, right? None of them have been service dogs, but I've seen service dogs, right? Often they'll have, that, like, hey, don't touch me, don't pet me, I'm working, my collar on. But what is it like? What does it really mean to be a service dog? Like what goes in? It's pretty extensive training, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So well, back when we were, interviewing Puppy Jake, we found out that it takes 2 years
Mm,
to train a service dog. So we were like, wow. And then we found out how long their waiting list is.
mm,
And it was quite extensive as well. So it takes 2 years, excuse me, 2 years to actually train them so we usually get them from 8 weeks old,
mm-hmm.
and then through those 2 weeks we'll go through several phases. And the first phase is puppy phase, um and then so that's like just potty training, getting them ready
Yeah,
for
like basic dog
um
training.
yeah, I mean, just, yeah, basics like sit, stay, mental stimulation, building their confidence, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
We go through their body parts, and a lot of sounds. Like we start them really early on with sounds, and even some of the cues that we use for service dog work. So like as we're putting them into the car, we'll say load, and then when they come out, okay, just to get them, going and ready for that's the service dog cue work and stuff.
Yeah.
So that they're hearing that all the time and getting that into their muscle memory. Um, and then we'll go into phase 2, which is more of the loose leash walking and collar cues and emergency behaviors, hand targets, things like that. And then we start with like intro to distractions outside and things like that, plus a whole lot. But
Right. Wow. So I mean,
Phase,
it's extensive then. I mean,
yeah,
a lot of work. And usually, I think you told me offline that um that typically trainers will only work with one dog at a time, right?
correct. Yeah. I mean, especially during like phase 1, 2, and 3, there you don't have time
For
to
everything else.
be with another puppy or another dog, unless you unless you have a pet dog or something. Um, but yeah, there's no time for having to train 2 or 3 dogs. No
At a
way.
time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like again, you're like your day to day. I mean, how many hours, I guess, are you spending with the? Does it depend on the phase that you're in, or is it usually just like 2, 3 hours every single day, regardless?
Yeah, it definitely does depend on the phase that we're
Mm,
in. Obviously, puppies are gonna take a lot more work
right.
than, I mean, even if you're not training a service dog, puppies are a lot of work.
Mm,
But, uh, um, but yeah, for puppies, so basically, like anything that the puppy interacts with that day, can be a learning experience for the
right.
puppy. So, I mean, and that's service dog or not service dog, but um, so you're basically on that puppy all day long,
Hmm.
making sure the
Yep.
puppy's not getting into trouble, not creating bad habits, not
Yep.
doing anything that they shouldn't be doing. And if they do get into that, not doing something that they're supposed to be doing, then, switching it out or doing something and making it a positive instead of a negative type of thing. So it definitely does take a lot more work for puppies, but then, later on, when you're in phase 3 or 4, it could be, maybe like 5 minutes here or 5 minutes there, or,
Okay.
15 minutes, or, throughout the day, so that they're not getting overstimulated, doing an
Yeah.
hour's worth of work or 2 hours worth of work, but yet, still they're getting their training done throughout the
Yeah.
day.
Okay. Well, I'm also really curious. Like, if somebody listening was loving what you're telling, like what you're talking about, and wants to kind of get involved with it, and are thinking about maybe becoming a service dog trainer, I mean, how involved is that process? Do you have to go to like certain like education, or is it something you can like learn by yourself online, or how does that look?
So how I did it through online work. So the first step is learning actually to be a dog trainer. Um, and then there's a separate service dog part as well.
Okay.
And I did it through online, but it depends on how you learn. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
mind learning online. So, but there is within that, excuse me. Um, a part at the end where you actually do have to do hands-on training
Mm.
with a trainer. And then you also have to, at least where I went through, this is how it worked, but you also have to find like a rescue shelter and train some of their dogs,
Oh,
um,
interesting.
as a volunteer basis.
Okay.
Um, so that just, that gives you some experience, training dogs and such. Um, and then for the service dog work, like I've learned that online as well,
Mm.
but and just through, practice, everyday practice and stuff, but and books. I've also learned that through books as well. But
Okay. So
yeah.
I mean, how long is that process typically? Like if you're starting from zero and trying to
Mhm.
get certified as a service dog trainer, is that 6 months, a year? How long does it typically take?
So it takes about a year and a half for
Okay.
just to become a certified dog trainer.
Oh, okay.
Um, and then, well, it depends on how fast you go through your work and stuff. But um, and then to learn the actual service dog work, um, takes probably a good another year or so, just to get into it and learn how to do it properly. And that, and I was always just reading, like
Always
articles
learning.
online and things like that. But and just to have that hands-on training, it does take some time. So,
I love that. Well, I mean, it's got to be such fulfilling work to see a dog go from a puppy, which we all know how puppies can be, to like a proper service dog who's, I would imagine they're like really like more serious, or like if they're working, they're more serious at least.
Yeah.
Are there like certain, breeds of dogs that are better for service dog work, or does it just depend on the temperament of the dog itself?
It does depend on the temperament of the dogs.
Mm,
We tend to use labs and golden retrievers. Some have, there are some service dogs. Any dog really could be a service dog.
yeah.
There are some service dogs that are uh, German shepherds, but I have a German shepherd myself, and sometimes German shepherds just their their will to do things can be,
They can be stubborn.
well, I don't want to say stubborn because I mean it's a myth that dogs are stubborn,
Mm,
but um it's basically all in their training or who's training them. But I just to give you an example. Um so German shepherds like it. They like what they like, okay? Um so I was training early on in my training. I was training my German Shepherd to sit, and I did it wrong.
mm,
And he ended up laying down. And so every time that I said sit, he laid down, and I could not get him to change that until later, much later. But so once a German Shepherd learns something, it's like ingrained into
yeah.
them, you know. Uh, so so I don't personally like to use German Shepherds for that experience that I've
Yeah.
had. But they are fantastic dogs. They are very smart. They are fantastic dogs. Um, but and we currently in our nonprofit have an owner trainer who
Mm,
has um I forget their breed. It's a terrier of some sort,
okay.
but so it's a smaller dog.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done extensive testing on the dog, and this dog is very smart, is able to um, do what he needs to do
Mm-hmm.
for to be a service dog. So, and he's been proving it over and over again throughout. So technically, any dog can be a service dog, but we tend to use labs and golden retrievers.
Okay. That's what I mean. I feel like that's what I've seen most, at least out
Yeah.
in the world. Um, so can you help me understand a little bit better? Because I mean, I know what a service dog is, I think, but like when it comes to like our military veterans or like our first responders that are maybe struggling with their mental health, and a service dog is helping them, like what does the day to day look like for the dog? What is the dog doing to help them?
Yeah. So they are, they're going through their normal day,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it just depends on the person, really.
Okay.
Sometimes the dog could help them actually wake up in the morning.
Mm,
Some veterans or emergency personnel, they'll have due to their PTSD, will have trouble waking up or getting out of bed in the morning. So the dog can actually help them to get out of bed, wake
mm,
them up, pull off the covers if need be, things like that.
yeah.
But there again, lots of times the families have them, they're only taking care of the dog. So the dog needs food, the dog needs to go potty,
Mm,
so that helps also to get them out of bed. Um, the next, one day it could look totally normal, a day. The next day it could be that they're having um, tremors, or, they're having some sort of whatever their PTSD may look like. And the dog can help them to break that cycle of, so if the, if the veteran or first hero, we'll say, if the
yeah.
hero is, shaking their leg because they're thinking in their head of something that happened, and they're
Mm-hmm.
shaking their leg uncontrollably, and they don't realize that they're doing that. The dog can or would um, interrupt that and break that cycle
Okay.
and help them to realize what they're doing so that they can stop, first thinking whatever they're thinking about to break that. So the dog would do like a
Interesting.
nose touch. Um, so it would be a nose touch, or like on their leg,
Hmm.
and or we could do like a deep pressure. So um, we would have the dog. So the shaking of the leg would be the cue, and then the dog would just like lay across the lap of the hero, so
Okay.
that so that they would feel that deep pressure and get the sensation of that. Um, and that, so that would be, the dog can go and get medicine. I mean, the dog can do lots of things. The dog can pull open refrigerator doors.
Mm.
They can, it depends on what their ailment is and what they actually
Are struggling with.
need done on a day-to-day
Yeah.
basis.
So does that mean that you said there's 4 phases to a service dog training? Is that right?
Yeah, the
So
fourth base is the task training.
the task training piece. So does that mean that, like, I guess at what point in the training do you have to identify, the hero to receive that service dog? Because it sounds like you might have to train them more specifically for, their individual need. Is that the case?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so before we even bring on a dog or match a dog to a recipient,
Yeah.
we put them through a vetting process.
Mm.
Our board goes through, once we get the application, the board will, assuming that, per HIPAA, assuming that they've given permission to the board to see. Otherwise, I would just explain to the board what might be going on with the person. Um, and that, you know, so we do have a specific protocol that we go through.
Okay.
They'll fill out their application. It'll go to the board. The board will make a decision, you know, and then they'll be matched with a dog's.
I love
So,
that. So I'm
yeah.
also curious because you talked a ton about like I feel like what we call like what I think of as like the in the trenches work where you're working with the dogs, you're identifying, heroes and those kind of things. But I'm curious more like on the back end side of it, like the nonprofit piece, like because I feel like a lot of times that could be a little daunting for people. Like, hey, I wanna I want to help correct this wrong that I see in the world. I think a nonprofit is the way to do that, but it can be hard sometimes, right? So what have been
Definitely,
some
yeah.
of your biggest challenges that you've faced, particularly early on when you started, Canine for Heroes, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I mean, so not knowing anything about nonprofit,
Mm,
or, how to run a nonprofit or anything, um, just, it was definitely a huge, huge learning curve.
yeah.
But the mountains that we faced, I mean, like the very first mountain we faced, which I thought was a mountain at the time, was not a mountain really. I mean, like we got through it so, seamlessly, really.
Yep.
Um, but and I think that let's see, what is it? The what's it called? Iowa. There's a nonprofit section
Mm,
in Iowa University that
okay.
helped us through this, and so um, they were wonderful, and it was very seamless. They have actually a book on nonprofits, on how to start a nonprofit, really.
I love
And
it.
so we just read this book and followed the instructions, and it was very easy. But going, thinking, okay, so how do I become a 501c3? No idea. But then, we got this book and it was fine. Um, so that was, early on. Most things have just been exactly that. We think of it as a mountain, but really it becomes a hill, and, all all good.
Yeah.
The thing that has become mountains is uh that I'm still trying to work through
Mm.
is fear. Fear's a big one. Just getting out there, putting yourself out there is huge. And then fundraising has also been a huge mountain to climb. And we're still working through that. We're still working through both of them, but it just takes, day to day doing something, getting it done and knowing that it's going to be okay. So,
Yeah. But I mean, I talk about that a ton in my coaching work is that fear piece, right? Because it's like you were just talking about, like very often the challenges that we're facing, we kind of build them up in our head where we think that they're much, much bigger or we're much less capable of dealing with them than is actually the case. And honestly, my favorite strategy for dealing with this is just being experimental, like finding some way to try things in a slightly different way that might improve things over the course of time, and then coming to it with that experimentation mindset where if you're experimenting, you can't fail because we're just experimenting. We're trying things out. And if we don't get the result we think we need, then we just iterate again and we just try something again and again until we get ultimately the result that we want, right?
yeah, I love that. I love that whole scenario of it because I've never thought of it that way before. But yeah, that I just love the positivity of that. And, then, really you can't fail.
So I'm also really curious, because we heard a ton about like your nonprofit work and the service dog training itself. So if somebody listening is thinking about, hey, I want to get involved in service dog training, or maybe I want to start a nonprofit of some sort, what advice would you give to somebody listening that is kind of early on in the days like that?
Yeah, so I would say it's definitely a marathon and not a race.
Yeah,
As human, I think we want, to see results like right now.
yeah, yes, I know I do.
But yeah, I do too. I've definitely fallen into that trap. Um, but because we want everything today.
Hmm.
But I would say just keep going. Know that, things are going to come. You're gonna see progress within that year. But just keep going and, persevere. I know I'm like I said, I get my small wins from like the dogs, the training the dog. But if their nonprofit is something different or they wanted to start something,
Mm.
not dog related or anything, just find those small little wins. Even every day you can have you know, you wrote an email today that was great or,
Yeah,
whatever.
yep.
But
Honestly, I love that, and I think you really hit the nail on the head. I feel like it's so easy to overlook those little wins sometimes because,
yeah,
sure, like we didn't get a huge donor, or we didn't get like the big win or whatever we think the big win is in our personal lives today. But just writing, like you said, like just writing like a really good email or reaching out to somebody that you thought you could never have a discussion with. Those are like the small wins that lead up to the big wins. And what I think is really important is making sure that we're celebrating those small wins in some way. And that doesn't necessarily mean we have to, you know, take 2 weeks off and go on a crazy vacation. It could mean that, but it could just be, hey, I'm going to take a 5 minute break and I'm going to go grab my, favorite coffee, or I'm going to take a walk because it's a beautiful day outside. Something like that to just like reinforce that we are doing the right things, that we are making progress. But again, for anybody listening, who or like how can they find out more about, Canine Miracles for Heroes, your nonprofit, or how can they get in touch with you if they want to, maybe they want to, become a service dog trainer, or maybe they, want to flow some donations your way.
yeah. We're always looking for volunteers. And our website is www.caninemiraclesforheroes.org. And so on there, they can make a donation. We have a calendar that we're selling currently. They can purchase a calendar full of veterans and emergency personnel with their personal pet.
I love it. I'll make sure to leave those links in the show notes. But as always, yeah, thank you all for tuning in today. It really does mean a world to both me and to Laura. It really is great to have you guys listening in. And make sure to follow and subscribe to hear more great stories like this. And we'll see you guys next time.